evening. This is Wednesday, May 28th, 160 days until the 2008 presidential election. He is not John Dean testifying to a Congress within a year of the crime that the president offered to get him $1 million to bankroll a Watergate cover-up when all around him called him liar and traitor. But in our fifth story tonight, as the second day of the Scott McClellan story we brought you first last night unfolded with the subtlety of a 10-megaton device, this thought: if an entire administration lied a nation into war, essentially killed and maimed thousands of its own troops, and one man finally says, "I can't lie anymore," has he earned himself some credit? Those who are or were deceiving can only do one of two things now. They can keep deceiving, or they can stop. McClellan, evidently, stopped. And they are his words. NBC News has learned tonight, no ghostwriter. Day two of an inconvenient truth-teller gate. Democratic Congressman Robert Wexler of Florida today having called for Scott McClellan to testify to Congress about the Bush administration's, quote, deliberate efforts to mislead the American people into the Iraq war. Mr. McClellan to speak out on this news hour tomorrow. Until then, his former colleagues, like former presidential advisor Karl Rove, firing back massive CYA about McClellan's charge in particular that he and Scooter Libby were getting their Valerie Plame cover stories straight, even as McClellan was insisting publicly that they were innocent.
It goes to show how out of the loop he was, that he didn't think we spent much time together. I mean, over the course of the 7 years or 6 years that we worked together, Scooter and I spent a lot of time first in the campaign, and then when we were at the White House, we were on several committees together. We were oft times, he was the vice president's representatives at a lot of policy meetings where we would have conversation and discuss. I mean, Scooter and I officed maybe 20 feet from each other.
Rove, of course, is central to McClellan's view of a White House deceptive and self-deceptive. So, though technically now outside it, no surprise that he was the first to use, perhaps to establish, the almost comically repeated defensive talking point.
First of all, this doesn't sound like Scott. It really doesn't. Not the Scott McClellan I've known for a long time. Second of all, it sounds like somebody else. It sounds like a left-wing blogger. Second of all, you're right. If he had these moral qualms, he should have spoken up about them. And frankly, I don't remember him speaking up about these things. I don't remember a single word.
So Rove compliments him like a left-wing blogger. Then it was Dana Perino representing the 75% of Bush press secretaries we're supposed to believe. Scott, we now know, she says, is disgruntled about his experience at the White House. For those of us who fully supported him before, during, and after he was press secretary, we are puzzled. It is sad. This is not the Scott we knew. There's a lot of puzzled people at the White House, like that's news. Take Mr. McClellan's former boss, Dan Bartlett, who is puzzled.
It's almost like witnessing an out-of-body experience with Scott, and the description I've read of the book and the allegations and assertions and conclusions he's drawn. And it really is a different person. Those of us who are closest to Scott during this process and during the last 8 years are really just puzzled by and bewildered by some of these views that he says he's always held, but he's never shared with some of his closest friends.
And who else is puzzled? To whom else is this not the Scotty they knew and loved and used? Why, the president, of course, speaking through his current press secretary, who's not lying, Ms. Perino, telling reporters aboard Air Force One this afternoon, he is puzzled. And he doesn't recognize this as the Scott McClellan that he hired and confided in and worked with for so many years, and disappointed that if he had these concerns and these thoughts, he never came to him or anyone else on the staff that we know of. Yes, just imagine how well it would have gone over had Mr. McClellan shared his concern that the president believed war in Iraq would give him a leg up on a legacy of greatness. Quoting from page 131 of the book, as I have heard Bush say, only a wartime president is likely to achieve greatness, in part because of the epical upheavals of war provide the opportunity for transformative change, the kind Bush hoped to achieve. In Iraq, Bush saw his opportunity to create a legacy of greatness. As for those cocaine rumors that surfaced during the 2000 campaign, Mr. McClellan, having heard Bush say back then, quote, "You know, the truth is I honestly don't remember whether I tried it or not. We had some pretty wild parties back in the day, and I just don't remember." I remember thinking to myself, McClellan writes, how can that be? How can someone simply not remember whether or not they used an illegal substance like cocaine? It didn't make a lot of sense. Taking another trip into the Wayback Machine to the day 2 years ago when Mr. McClellan announced his resignation. And we're pretty sure that this will never happen.
One of these days, he and I are going to be rocking on chairs in Texas, talking about the good old days of his time as the press secretary. And I can assure you I will feel the same way then that I feel now, that I can say to Scott, job well done.
Thank you, sir.
And mission accomplished. Time now to call on our own Dana Milbank, national political reporter of the Washington Post, former White House correspondent for that newspaper. Good evening, Dana.
Hello, Keith.
Karl Rove's out-of-the-loop remark is fascinating on at least two fronts. Two questions about it. By saying that McClellan was out of the loop on just how closely aligned he and Libby really were inside the White House, did he not confirm Mr. McClellan's contention that he was misled, that he was purposely kept out of the loop?
Well, to coin a phrase, I'm puzzled by this, Keith. But, well, yes, he did. And I suspect somewhere in Chicago, Patrick Fitzgerald is having a stiff drink tonight, wondering what else he didn't know. But in trying to refute this sort of narrow point that Scott raised in the book about this suspicious meeting, he thought, between Rove and Libby, they were suggesting, well, we have these meetings all the time. You can bet they probably weren't discussing health care in those meetings. So it obviously doesn't prove anything, but it does raise a suspicion that, and certainly validates what McClellan was saying in terms of him being misinformed by Libby, by Rove, and theoretically by the Vice President and the President himself.
The other part of this, of course, though, if you say we left the press secretary, that press secretary, out of the loop, does that not also mean that Mr. Fleischer and Mr. Snow were also left out of the loop, and Ms. Perino is at this moment being left out of the loop? I mean, did Karl Rove not obliterate the credibility of Mr. Bush's other three press secretaries, two of whom are at this moment criticizing the third one, Mr. McClellan?
Well, the fallacy in the question is that there was a certain credibility to start with here. And, I mean, seriously, that has fallen by the wayside long ago. And I think what McClellan's point really brings out here is that either you're in the loop and you're misinforming people, or you're out of the loop and you're inadvertently sending across bad information. Now, neither of those is a particularly good possibility. And I think that explains the ferocity of the White House response. We have Bartlett, Rove, Perino, even Ari Fleischer out of retirement, dusting off the jersey and getting back in the game.
But, again, what would Fleischer and Perino know if secretaries are out of the loop? The one thing described at length by Scott McClellan in this book, this idea of the permanent campaign as the operating principle for the entirety of the White House. Does this concept by itself explain a lot of what we have witnessed in the past 7 years? The administration has never been concerned with what to do with power, just getting it via a campaign?
Yes, I mean, nothing is particularly new about the accusation of the permanent campaign. What's happened is the extent to which it seems to have pervaded everything, to the point that McClellan is even suggesting that there should be a deputy chief of staff in the White House in charge of governing. Well, there was a time when that person was actually the president in charge of governing, and the rest of his White House staff, and politics was off in a corner. So while the permanent campaign certainly predates this president, it seems to have, certainly by this account, become more pervasive than ever before.
All right, well, joining in on the permanent campaign for a second, how does this hit not George Bush but John McCain? I mean, he spent today engaging Obama on Iraq. McClellan confirms that war was a foregone conclusion from the start, was not necessary, and all the rationalizations that John McCain is now repeating is essentially BS.
Yes, well, I don't think we're going to have bumper stickers and pins saying "Remember McClellan," so it's not a threat in that sense. But in the broader sense, whenever the conversation turns to doubts about Iraq or anything about the current president, it's bad for McCain. So this is hitting both of those things and taking another whack at the president's credibility. All of this has a negative effect on McCain. The question is really to what extent.
You wonder, when the subject of Iraq comes up in a debate, presuming it's Senator Obama standing at the other podium, if he doesn't just reach underneath and go, now what page was this again in here? It's right. Sorry, Senator McCain. Dana Milbank of MSNBC and the Washington Post. As always, thank you, Dana.
Thanks, Keith.